Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And this week we're celebrating Meghan Markle's 38th birthday. We've just finished a beautiful meal designed by a forward-thinking chef.
Sorry, Tom, I was just so distracted gazing at my own reflection in the mirror on the cover of Meghan's September issue of British Vogue.
It is something to get lost in. But we'll be doing that a bit later.
For now, we turn to the sun, where Mystic Meg has consulted the stars to give us a read on what is in store for Meghan's 39th year.
You'll be pleased to hear that it's pretty good news, I think, in general.
Mystic Meg says, the Sun and Mercury in the regal and theatrical sign of Leo show she was born to be famous and influential, while the Moon, Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto all gathered in the sign of Libra, so she has a talent for politics and fashion. That nails it, doesn't it?
It really does.
And on top of it, Tom, Mars in Cancer and Venus in Virgo give her a subtle sexiness, as well as wanting to save the world. It's the full package.
She goes into so much detail. I didn't know you could tell all this from the stars, but apparently Meghan's chart suggests that she's going to have twins next time.
This is my favourite bit, though. Her future scope shows she does miss acting, and a brilliant one-off appearance in a glamorous West End play could make her miss it even more. Tom, what would you give to attend that West End play?
I would give everything I own to sit in the front row that play. Maybe in the Royal Box, actually.
What play would it be? Do you think she'd do a musical? Is it going to be a Shakespeare thing? Could it be a Pinter? Something more abstract?
I think that it would be like a one-woman show. I think there'd be a lot of like character work, but then maybe like mixed with
Fleabag. I bet she loves Fleabag.
Yeah, she almost definitely does. I'd say there could be like some sort of Alan Bennett style monologues though, where she like talks about custard creams and other kind of like British things that she's discovered since moving here. But if you're worried about what romantic storms might be on the way, you can put those fears to rest, because her relationship with Harry is both romantic, sturdy and passionate.
Mystic Meg is promising best ever love, because Venus and Mars are both in her sign. What fantastic news.
That's brilliant.
Other great news today is that we got a real plethora of Instagram content from all of the royals to mark Meghan's big day. So you had even Prince Andrew was getting in on the act with a main feed post. I think this is quite unusual. They usually only post main feed for their immediate relatives, and then they'll just do a comment. Now, I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist about this, and I'm wondering, is it because they know Meghan will rack up the likes because pictures of her are so popular? Is it because it's a quiet period and they need some content to fill the holiday season? Or is it a sign of a united front in support of Meghan after a pretty difficult few weeks, few months, year, couple of years?
I mean, I think certainly in Andrew's case, he owes her one. She's taken the heat for so much recently. She's kept the spotlight off other areas of royal behaviour. So I think it's probably a mixture of all those things. I'd say that getting a lot of likes is like a good bonus and a bit of activity. I would hope that the main reason is a show of unity, because it's a bit overdue at this point.
I think my favourite was Clarence House's Instagram post, which had a lovely picture of Meghan in her Erdem coat from when she was pregnant, and then it had a second picture of her and Charles and a third picture of her and Camilla. When on Camilla's birthday, they posted that one picture of her standing in the doorway in that blue tunic with the grease stain on it. Of course, the highlight was the Sussex Royal post, which was a picture we had seen before. Gorgeous picture of Meghan in that bright blue shirt dress that she wore on their visit to Tonga. And it had such a sweet caption, which read, "Happy birthday to my amazing wife. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. Love, H." I mean, he does owe her a thank you. Like,
yeah,
he's some adventure.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, all these lovely messages have been maybe not overshadowed, but accompanied by some less nice activity on Instagram.
The Kensington Royal birthday post for Meghan was a picture of the four of them from Christmas and had all these mean comments underneath it from Kate and Will stans saying horrible things about Meghan. And then they took their mean-spiritedness to Sussex Royal, because earlier this week on Instagram, Meghan and Harry posted a picture in that fabulous navy that they have made their signature that read, "Who is your force for change?" Because they do that thing every month where they follow certain accounts to spotlight various causes and issues, they asked people to suggest in the comment section an account that inspires you to be and do better. And they said they were going to choose 15 accounts and follow them on Monday. So today, if you're listening to this today, I think now they have 70,000 comments. And so many of them are just Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cambridge or various bitter comments comparing Meghan to Kate.
Yeah, it's so unnecessary, it's so mean-spirited, and it's so anti the whole like ethos of this post. It's not as though they posted something saying that they were forces for change, or look at what we're doing.
Looking for lesser known people and accounts and organizations. Everybody knows who Kate Middleton is, so it's just trolling, and it's a bad vibe, and I'm not into it.
All this social media furore will probably have completely passed by one member of the royal family who's definitely not on Instagram at the moment. So the Queen is up at Balmoral. She's on holiday, finally.
She's letting her hair down.
She doesn't discard all her duties, though, when she's on holiday, because she's up there, she has a guard of honour, and she inspects their sandwiches.
This is the best damn sandwich I ever ate. It's a baguette with brie and butter. I had 4 of these damn things every day I was there. You gotta try this.
There was a bit in the Daily Mail this week, a little nugget that described the Queen's curious ritual. The inspection of sandwiches provided for her soldiers. They had a kilt-clad source close to the royals tell them she inspects the packed lunches of all regiments. Those that don't make the grade are sent back.
I mean, good.
She literally tastes their sandwiches.
Yeah, that's what I found very funny, is that her inspecting the sandwiches is eating them.
Eating other people's lunch.
Yeah, so she is the kind of person who doesn't order her own chips at lunch. She just inspects everybody else's.
But that's not the only way that she spends her time on holiday. So we spoke previously about her favourite pastime, which is watching the bats being chased out of Balmoral Castle. Once they've all flown out and she's kept the windows open so they can fly back in and do the whole thing over again,
She puts the telly on.
Apparently, according to The Sun, her private secretary sends a list of the TV shows she wants to watch during her holiday to the Special Services Department at the BBC, which then puts together this whole collection on separate DVD discs.
Her taste is probably the most British taste I've ever seen. Her favourite of all time is The Bill, and she supplements her list with shows including Keeping Up Appearances, Midsummer Murders, New Tricks, Last of the Summer Wine, and The Complete Doctor Who. I love that she has enough time to watch The Complete Doctor Who. There's 50 years of it.
What does this list tell you about the person watching?
I feel like with both Midsummer Murders and New Tricks, and, kind of Doctor Who as well, she possibly sees herself as a bit of a detective figure, an armchair detective.
Okay.
Swooping in to save the day. She likes this idea of like the lone figure that comes in and is responsible for restoring justice and a sense of right in the world.
If she gets bored of watching TV, she might get one of her aides to set up the podcast app.
Princess Eugenie is starting a podcast. It's in association with her charity, the Anti-Slavery Collective, which she co-founded with her friend, Julia de Boinville. A royal podcast about slavery. What could go wrong?
I feel bad about how funny I find this, because obviously it's a very noble and worthy cause, but who wants to listen to a podcast about modern slavery hosted by Princess Eugenie?
If I were her, I would have had somebody else presenting this podcast, and that she could maybe do the odd kind of guest appearance to come and talk about her involvement in the charity or something.
They haven't actually said who will be hosting it, so maybe she'll take our feedback But at the moment, I just can't even imagine what this is going to sound like.
Yeah.
And I also would love to know what the reaction inside the palace was when this was announced.
Now is the time to talk about this. This is on everyone's mind. And if it isn't, we make it on their mind.
Are there any royal podcasts that you would love to exist?
I mean, I think I'd listen to Kate Middleton and Prince George's tennis podcast.
Yeah, that would be
I don't
really
even
good.
like tennis, but I would listen to that for sure. I would also definitely be on board for a Meghan Markle Goop style podcast, and I feel like she would also be.
Really into that.
And also, they don't need the controversy that would attend Meghan's royal endorsed yoni beads, yoni eggs.
Anna Winter's office.
Is anyone coming to this run through except for me?
The big story this week, though, has a little bit of a goopishness to it.
It is, of course, Meghan's guest-edited September issue of British Vogue.
It's a cracker, guys.
We have been immersed in this, as you would be immersed in a sound bath, since it came out.
Meghan has joined the long tradition of royal guest editors that includes Prince Charles, who guest edited Country Life magazine in 2013 and 2018.
Prince Harry guest-edited a BBC Radio 4 show. It was one where he talked to Barack Obama and also his dad. That was in 2017. It was just after Christmas.
And Kate Middleton guest edited Huffington Post UK in 2016 for a day dedicated to children's mental health.
You say she guest-edited for a day. She arrived at the office at 10 a.m, but the office was downstairs. It was in her own living room.
She rolled out of bed and went into another apartment in Kensington Palace where they had set up
A temporary newsroom. She also left to go have lunch and didn't come back.
Yeah, she was papped going shopping in Lululemon leggings in the Daily Mail with a whole armload of shopping bags.
So,
I mean, it doesn't speak to an incredible work ethic, does it? Or a great editor's mind. I mean, it doesn't matter that all these other royals guest edited because Meghan still got a lot of heat for it. Apparently, she didn't consult Buckingham Palace officials before guest editing Vogue. A royal source told The Sun Meghan didn't ask anyone's opinion as she felt she didn't need to.
I love that. I really, really think it's so good. It's so refreshing. But enough of the negativity. Let's have a look at the cover. I have to say, my first impression of the cover was not a positive one.
I was just so surprised. I don't really know what I was expecting. I did think it would be more of a group shot. As it is, it's 16 panels featuring 15 women that are being called forces for change. And the 16th slot, as we mentioned earlier, is a mirror of sorts. It's a silver foil.
Yeah. It sort of gives the effect of one of those kind of funhouse mirrors.
It's so Meghan. Like, it's so cheesy. It's so naff. It's so Tig.
Yeah. It's very gestural. It doesn't necessarily work 100%, but the idea behind it is lovely.
She said about the mirror, among all these strong women on the cover, a mirror. A space for you, the reader, to see yourself, because you too are part of this collective. That sentiment is pure Tig and pure Meghan. That's her all over, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But of course, the main thing that everybody was talking about was that Meghan is not on the cover. And Edward Enninful explained this in his editor's letter when he said, from the very beginning, we talked about the cover, whether she would be on it or not. In the end, she felt that it would be in some ways a, quote, boastful thing to do for this particular project. She wanted instead to focus on women she admires. So everybody went nuts over boastful.
Yeah, everyone clipped it totally out of context of a project that's talking about forces for change.
And decided it was some kind of dig at Kate Middleton, who was on the cover of British Vogue in 2016.
When she wasn't guest editing it, and when there wasn't a theme of forces for change or forces for anything.
It's so difficult. You know, Meghan would definitely have been criticised if she was on the cover.
Yeah.
That it would be just another example of Meghan acting more like a celebrity than a royal. I think she obviously had that in mind as one of the possible reasons why she decided not to be on the cover. I also think it does make sense if you are the guest editor, to put yourself on the cover could be seen as a little bit presumptuous.
Yeah, because it's your decision, it's not anybody else's.
Yeah, although we would have loved to see her on the cover. I think it would have been great to have her in a group shot, because the photographer is Peter Lindbergh, who had shot the Vanity Fair cover that Meghan did before she married Harry. And British Vogue said that the reference for this cover was Peter Lindbergh's famous 1990 cover of British Vogue. It's that black and white shot of 5 supermodels, and you've got Naomi Campbell, you've got Chrissy Turlington, you've got Cindy Crawford. It's a pretty iconic image by now, and I can see how it would appeal to Meghan because she loves black and white imagery so much. But I think a group shot would have worked so much better than this like assembly of portraits.
Yeah, I felt a bit let down. I would have liked to see the text being in the mirrored kind of silver, so you get that like element of reflection, but I wasn't consulted.
I did think individually the portraits are beautiful, especially on the inside when you get the full page shots. And I particularly liked that Peter Lindbergh said he spoke to Meghan over the phone before he started doing the shoot, and he said, "My instructions from the Duchess were clear. I want to see freckles." I can just hear her saying that.
Yeah.
So Meghan, she has spoken before about how much she loves her freckles and she doesn't like them being airbrushed out or wearing too much makeup to cover them. Like, you could see it on her wedding day even. Yeah. She's very into that kind of natural look, and so is Peter Lindbergh, which is why they chose him. But let's dive in, Tom. What I love about this issue is how evocative all of the writing is. It's like it really paints a picture of Meghan's involvement and all the logistics of how the issue came about. Like, in Edward Enninful's editor's letter, he writes that Meghan was the one that reached out to him. So she sent him an email back in January, signed with a single letter, M.
It's so good. I mean, all the description from Edward Enninful in this letter and then in Meghan Markle's editor's letter as well, it paints the beginning of this like it's the opening of a movie.
Because then when you go into Meghan's guest editor's letter, the opening line is, "It was in early January on a cold and blustery London day that I sat down for a cup of tea with British Vogue's editor-in-chief, Edward Enninful." And then she goes on to talk about how they have much in common, including our love of writing. I mean, that is just evident on every page, isn't it? She has such a signature writing style. This guest editor's letter is just a stunning example.
I loved it because she has this line, "Over a steaming cup of mint tea, we teased through how one can shine light in a world filled with seemingly daily darkness." There's so much texture to the scene where you've got like the light shining through the darkness, through the steam from the mint tea, onto a letter with a single M, you know.
But then you also have that royal, how one can shine light, you know, it's all there. I really liked how she set the scene for us, her asking him if she could guest edit. She says, "So I asked the question. Actually, I typed and deleted the question several times until I built up the courage to ask the question in question."
The question in question.
She has such a blog style.
Yeah.
Then comes my favourite line in the whole issue. So she sends him the text asking, "Would you be open to me guest editing your September issue instead of doing the cover?" And then we have a ... to signify that he is replying. And of this, she says, "The ellipsis ... The ... that inspires the greatest practice of patience in this digital era." Such a keen observation.
I know, she cuts to the heart of modern life.
Then again, we get another scene. "Sitting on my sofa at home, 2 dogs nestled across me. I quietly celebrated when the words appeared on my screen," saying that he accepted. I mean, don't we all just want to imagine that Meghan just sits on her sofa in Frogmore Cottage with a roaring fire and her cup of steaming mint tea and the dogs curled around her while baby Archie sleeps in the next room?
The ellipsis flashing away on her phone.
I think though, even though Meghan comes from a blogger background, she was very keen to get into editor mode. And Edward Enninful said, "From the outset, I discovered someone with a real editor's mind." And she was clearly very eager because she writes about undergoing a crash course in editorial lingo and acronyms aplenty, having to learn all the terminology that they used in producing the magazine. I was trying to blend in to keep up with the pace of these seasoned professionals and to learn as much as I could as quickly as possible. I mean, as if Meghan is ever going to blend in anywhere again, ever in her life.
She's writing about this as though, you know, it's Devil Wears Prada and she's in there on her first day. I just imagine when they get to the Lifetime movie of this part of Meghan's life, they'll put in a bit where she, like, trips over something on the way into the office or something.
Okay, can you please spell Gabbana?
I do wish, though, that Edward Enninful had given her a cerulean speech, because she has like a little passage in the editor's letter that I thought was so condescending when she describes readers gearing up for the September fashion shows, where judgment can become clouded and focus skewed toward the superficial. That didn't sit well with me at all. And then she goes on to quote a book and says, "This line has always resonated with me. I must be a mermaid, Rango. I have no fear of depths and a great fear of shallow living. For this issue, I imagined, why would we swim in the shallow end of the pool when we could go to the deep end?" I mean, one, like, amazing imagery of Meghan as the mermaid, guiding us all through the pool of life, but also really hate the insinuation that any other issue of Vogue is shallow.
Both those belts look exactly the same to me. You know, I'm still learning about this stuff and
This stuff?
I think she could have taken a lesson from the piece she commissioned from Sally Hughes, the beauty columnist, where she says, "A passion for surface does not suggest lack of depth."
I think she should have read that piece before she wrote her guest editor's letter.
I know. I thought that was the real low point for me. One of the things I thought was interesting about this issue was that Meghan continuously offers these caveats and disclaimers. One of the big ones is about how there's going to be ads and this is a business. And I feel confident that you'll feel my thumbprint on most pages. But please know that there are elements that just come with the territory.
It's really interesting because in some ways it's like preparing for, I guess, the inevitable backlash that this issue received. People criticising every possible choice. It's also representative of this kind of intern mentality that she's gone into the issue with, having to learn everything from scratch and apologising for things she might have done wrong. And the biggest instance of that comes later, because she has this interview with Michelle Obama about motherhood, and she starts it by saying she should have done the questions better. She was expecting the interview to be kind of half a page at the end of the magazine, which is where British Vogue tends to have a Q&A to kind of close the issue. But the answers that she received were very thoughtful. They were much longer than she had expected. And I think she realises that she could have got a bit more out of this if she'd known.
I think that's so funny. Like, you'd never be allowed to do that in any other instance. But Meghan offers an apology, basically, saying, if I'd known that Michelle was going to be so generous, I would have called her and included the banter on these pages, the laughs and sighs and ping-pong of dialogue as I chimed in.
She gives this detail that they first discussed the possibility of Michelle doing this interview over a casual lunch of chicken tacos.
Oh my God.
And food is a big part of the imagery around this magazine, because she likens the construction of a magazine to a beautiful meal. The first bite sets the tone, and the final spoonful leaves you satiated, smiling, and sometimes, if you're dining under the direction of a forward-thinking chef, even inspired.
I mean, for a foodie like Meghan, that just makes so much sense.
I love that she sees herself as a forward-thinking chef.
I think one of the other really good details we get in this is that Michelle sent Meghan a Mother's Day card, which is so sweet. I love that Meghan has this support group around her with Oprah and Gayle King and Beyonce and Michelle Obama. I mean, oh my God, what a murderer's row of supporters. But I think the best part is the final question, as she says herself, is a real wild card when she asks Michelle, what is the most beautiful sound that you've ever heard?
It comes totally out of nowhere, but it makes so much sense.
That is definitely what I would say to Meghan if I ever met her. You really can feel Meghan's thumbprint elsewhere in the magazine. The September issue is meant to be the big fashion issue because it's when the autumn-winter collections come into stores, and it's also gearing up for the September fashion shows. And Megan's influence can be seen all over this.
Because the focus is suits.
They have done a workwear special for their trends. So we've got 15 pages of suits, and more suits. The photo shoots really fade into the background, I think. You know, usually they'd be the focal point of a September issue. Here they're almost an afterthought. And the one shoot that they do highlight is one that features 7 emerging Commonwealth designers. So again, you've got the royal connection there. And they have a piece on brands that are dedicated to being environmentally conscious. So that really taps into Meghan's interest in sustainability. And they have a little feature on how fashion got friendly, which echoes a sentiment that Meghan made in a speech at the British Fashion Awards in December. So all of that kind of stuff, I think, shows Meghan's impact.
Yeah, and where her focus in the fashion world is.
Her interests really lie elsewhere, I think, with this issue. So one of the things a lot of people have been talking about is that it features a poem by Matt Haig called A Note from the Beach. And I thought these 2 lines were so reflective of Meghan's mindset, and I can see these being almost a mantra that she repeats to herself in difficult times. Why do you humans worry so much about a stranger's opinion? Why don't you just do what I do? Let it wash all over you.
Meghan, life's a beach.
There's also a feature on a bakery in Stoke Newington called the Luminary Bakery that offers 6-month training programs to victims of violence such as sex trafficking, to former prisoners or former homeless women. So that seems like something that is Meghan all over again. Like, you've got the bakery and you've got the social enterprise. That was one of the stronger features, I thought. She does enlist a few more well-known names as well, though. So she has Jamila Jamil talking about body image and self-acceptance and her eating disorder, and Brené Brown talking about social media cruelty and how to cope with it and stay true to yourself, which again seems like something Meghan would really take to heart, because Bren's biggest advice is don't respond to the trolls.
Just put out an issue of Vogue instead.
Oh, okay.
Of course, it wouldn't be a Meghan guest-edited issue without some of the more new age, goopy stuff. There is a feature on how to feel good with holistic treatments to relax and invigorate. So I think the best one here has got to be the gong bath.
So interested in this idea of alternative bathing because Kate is apparently a big fan of forest bathing, which is absorbing the sensations of sitting or walking in woodland. So that obviously really speaks to her like garden interest and being outdoors. But Meghan's gone for something different. It's gong bathing, sound baths, where you lie and experience the vibrations of these huge sounds.
In a very swish spa in Kensington.
Yeah. I want to know how big the waiting list is for that now.
I mean, sign me up. But for now, Tom, I just have to focus on my breathing.
Well, breathing is very important.
According to Vogue, it's the key to well-being. Because from our first inhalation to our last, breath is what keeps us alive. And breathing is something we need to take more seriously.
Which is something I've been saying to you for ages.
I mean, this piece is such a joke.
To save you the bother of reading it, the most important takeaway is just breathe through your nose most of the time. Meghan has been involved in this charity SmartWorks for a little while now. So their focus is helping unemployed women going for job interviews to nail their CV, make a great first impression, and then help them with any follow-up interviews and first day of work and that kind of thing. So it's a really great initiative. And Meghan's kind of observation on it was that it's great to get all these donated clothes, but quite often the clothes don't match or they're not quite right for the person. You want to be feeling comfortable and making sure that you're showing the best version of yourself when you go for a job interview. So Meghan's idea has been to develop a line of workwear clothes that would help this charity.
I think this is such a clever idea. She describes it in Vogue by saying that she's going to be working with Marks and Spencer, John Lewis and Partners, Jigsaw, and her friend, the designer Misha Nonu, to design a capsule collection of more classic options for a workwear wardrobe. And when you buy one of these pieces, one will also be donated to the charity. So she describes the donations in the most Meghan way ever as being not a hand-me-down, but rather a hand being held.
It's
And
beautiful.
I mean, it's just so Meghan. But I can't get over how good this idea is. I cannot believe that they haven't done something like this before. It is such an innovative way to harness the interest in royal style and the Meghan effect or the Duchess effect, because everything she wears sells out anyway. So to have something that is at a much more accessible price point and also has a Meghan connection and it benefits the charity, it's brilliant.
But she's so good at picking these things which you feel like there's a real personal connection for her, and like that she's really thought about where she can have the greatest impact.
This is the best thing to come out of the Vogue issue, I think. One of the more controversial things to come out of the issue, however, is that Meghan commissioned her husband, Prince Harry, to do an interview with Jane Goodall, who we were talking about last week. They talk about
The environment, why she moved her focus from being strictly a primatologist through to kind of the human impact on the planet and on each other.
But really all anybody is talking about is that there's like kind of a throwaway comment, I think. In one of his questions, he says, "I've always wanted to try and ensure that even before having a child and hoping to have children." And she says, "Not too many." And he says, "2 maximum." So people took this as him saying that anybody who has more than 2 children is stealing the planet from future generations. Even though it's actually Jane Goodall who says you shouldn't have too many, and he just says...
it seems like he's just trying to kind of keep the conversation going and agreeing with her.
This is going to follow him around forever now, because people made such a fuss about it. They thought it was a dig at Will and Kate for having 3 kids, or a dig at the Queen for having 4. I mean, especially the way it was presented out of context, it sounds like he just interrupted the interview to make this proclamation. And then the other thing that has been getting a lot of headlines are his comments on unconscious bias.
So he raises the topic of unconscious bias, which he frames as something which so many people don't understand why they feel the way that they do. He says, despite the fact that if you go up to someone and say, what you've just said or the way that you've behaved is racist, they'll turn around and say, I'm not a racist. To which he kind of replies, I'm not saying that you're a racist, I'm saying that your unconscious bias is proving that because of the way you've been brought up, the environment you've been brought up in, suggests that you have this point of view, an unconscious point of view, where naturally you will look at someone in a different way.
So people took this to be a rant or a lecture and to carry some kind of implicit message or statement about the racist treatment of Meghan, which it may very well do, and rightfully so, but that he is supposedly not entitled to talk about this at all because of his own past when he wore that Nazi costume to a fancy dress party in 2005, and then a few years later when he used a racist slur to describe another officer in a video diary. Obviously he apologised for both of those things, and that's a long time ago now, and I think it's crazy to keep holding someone to account for something that they have apologised for and are showing that they've grown from and learned from.
Okay, and I don't think that he is giving this speech or opinion from a place of saying, and I've totally overcome all of my unconscious bias.
Yeah.
He is saying that it's something that everyone needs to work on, and everyone has these biases, and that it's a work in progress. I think in that spirit, you kind of would like to hear that coming from someone who has acknowledged their own problematic public mistakes.
And it didn't help that there were rumours this week that Harry may have gone to the Google Camp Climate Change Conference in Sicily and travelled on a private jet. It was rumoured that Kate and Will had attended, and Kensington Palace immediately denied it. But when Buckingham Palace was asked if Harry had gone, they just said, this is not something we're commenting on. So they wouldn't confirm or deny it. If he did go, terrible optics. It looks dreadful, especially after the comments about sustainability and the environment that just came out earlier this week. But we don't really know either way. Meghan is also hard at work on another writing project.
This is very exciting. I was thrilled when I heard this. So Meghan is supposedly planning on writing a children's book that would revolve around her rescue dogs.
There's a story in The Sun this weekend that Meghan's writing her first book, and it would seem likely any profits would be donated to charity, according to a royal source. That makes a lot of sense.
And she's adding to a rich royal literary tradition because both Prince Charles and Sarah Ferguson are also children's authors. Charles wrote a book in 1980 called The Old Man of Lochnagar.
Hello, 'tis the old man here, the old man of Lochnagar.
Which seems like some kind of sci-fi fantasy storybook for kids about a man who lives in a cave and he meets all these characters like a grouse who repels visitors, an underwater haggis who revolves as he swims, and miniature green people. And then Fergie's book is about a little helicopter called Budgie.
Budgie is a little helicopter.
It's basically a precursor to Cars.
I know someone who's not going to be happy about this news though, Tom.
Who's that?
Bogart.
Aww.
Meghan's poor dog Bogart, who was deemed too old to travel with her when she moved to the UK and had to stay behind.
Just be him leafing through an advance copy, a single tear.
Let's hope Meghan has something a little more hopeful for us than this tale of separation and canine woe.
We're far from the shallow now.
I suppose I'll swim up out of the deep end now and join you wallowing in the shallows to talk about our fit for a queen.
It's Meghan, right?
Yeah, it's got to be Meghan, and for my money, it's got to be the Everlane jumpsuit.
This black sleeveless v-neck jumpsuit with wide legs and a sash belt. She was still pregnant at the time. We saw it in a little video on Vogue's Instagram TV about the making of the issue. This is a brand that we know Meghan loves. She's worn their tote bag before. It's an American brand, an ethical, slow fashion brand, and also a much more affordable piece. It costs $120.
That just seems like so Meghan to me.
You know what else is so Meghan? My quote of the week. I mean, it was really hard to pick just one because we got so much fantastic writing from Meghan.
I don't think there's ever been so much to choose from.
If only she could have a monthly missive or a newsletter or something.
Or a blog.
Or indeed a royal blog that she could share this stuff with us. What is your quote of the week, Tom?
It comes from Meghan's Vogue, but it's not attributed to her. It's just the line, breathing is something we need to take more seriously.
Words to live by.
Yeah. And do you know what? Since then, I really have. What about you?
I mean, I gotta go back to that ellipsis. Penned by Meghan herself. The ellipsis, ... the ... that inspires the greatest practice of patience in the digital era. I mean, it doesn't even work in a verbal sense. You have to see it written down. And we will write it down in our Instagram quote of the week later this week, so don't worry, you'll get to experience the full force of the quote.
I think Ellipsis is a strong contender for the mystery name of their dog. Is it a redundant question? Who's your first in line this week?
I mean, it's Meghan. There's nobody else but her for me. She's our birthday girl, she's our Vogue editor, she's our children's book writer, she's our breather-in-chief.
She's delivered it all this week.
So I'm late for a gong bathing session, so we need to wrap this up. But next week we will be back to talk about a major sporting event which will see Kate and Will going head to head at the inaugural regatta, the King's Cup on the Isle of Wight. So we will have our recap of all the action.
We'll see you landlubbers next week.
Thank you so much for listening. You can follow us on Instagram at airheadspod,
Twitter at airheadspod, or find our Facebook page at Airheads.
We would love it so much if you would leave us a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts, and have a great week.
Thank you. Bye.